The Dallas Cowboys have hired John Park. Who is he and what will his role be during the 2023 season? All that and more in this episode of Locked On Cowboys Podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL. And when you enter promo code LockedOnNFL, they'll throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti style tumbler, just like this one, with every order. Again, that is birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, what's going on, sir?
Not much. It's Friday. We're talking Cowboys football. It doesn't get much better than that. We are going to try to get through this podcast without killing the rest of poor Marcus's voice. If you can hear it in his voice right now, might as well address the elephant in the room. Marcus is dealing with some of the Canadian fire. So all of our Canadian listeners, I place the blame squarely on you.
It's your fault. Yeah, it's your fault. We'll power through the podcast. We'll be fine. Yeah. I think it also had to do with me doing like 5 different podcasts yesterday, but
that may
whatever.
Have to do with it too. That's right.
Landon, the Cowboys made some news this week. They've hired analytics guru John Park, who was with the Colts. Can we just talk about his role a little bit? We got a question from Kevin. He wants to know, who is John Park and what position does he coach?
Yeah. I think it's a little bit, for all of us that are in this for the football things, it's tough to kind of parse the positions of the analytics department and exactly what's going on and exactly what they're doing. And a lot of it is because it's not a uniform job across the league. I think each department does a little bit different. They attack a whole bunch of different types of problems. I think that there are some kind of universal things that they tackle usually in, draft value, contracts, that sort of thing, analytics on fourth downs and that sort of thing. Like those are things that, I think that most every analytics department will kind of attack. But for the most part, they kind of are special projects. They get deployed to take a look at, to go on to special projects, meaning hey, go find out how efficient our first down runs were this year, or go find out what the common denominator was between all these defenses that we struggled with, between 21 and 23 or something like that. So that's usually the kind of work that these guys do. It's completely, behind the curtain for fans. So it's basically unviewable, but here's what we know about this guy, John Park, right? John comes from the Indianapolis Colts, part of a duo that was very, very well thought of over there. When Frank Reich left Indianapolis, he took one of the other half of this duo from Indianapolis, and John Park has come over kind of as in a promotion from his job in Indianapolis. And they did a wide variety of things, including a whole bunch of game day, during the game on the headset kind of analysis for the coaches to help them kind of get an idea of, I'm assuming, odds on fourth down going for it, that sort of things. What do the percentages say to do on this play and that sort of thing. And they were, from what I understand, one of the first teams to do this and to have a lot of success. And a lot of teams kind of followed suit afterwards. So I think this is an interesting hire simply because I didn't really know what to think. They just fired their other head analytics guy.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to mention. Tom Robinson. Right before the draft, they moved on from Robinson, who was the director of football research, I believe.
Yeah,
I gotta believe that John Park is basically going to be filling that role. Correct?
Yeah, I have to assume that they felt like they were getting an upgrade here, right? Like that they were kind of moving on with him and trying to get this guy. I've asked around a little bit, and I can't, I'm not going to get into too much with exactly what I've heard, but the returns of what I've heard, the kind of headline of what I've heard is the Cowboys got an absolute steal, and maybe even one of the very best football analytics guys in all of the NFL. So I've heard nothing but extremely positive reviews from folks that would know about, analytics in football. And so I'm really excited simply because I do think it shows it's not only, an upgrade in this position, but I think my fear was that, after we saw Robinson get let go, what was the future for the Cowboys in their commitment to analytics? And this to me shows a strong commitment to it and a strong commitment to the future of analytics and kind of what the Cowboys are going to do with that department and what the Cowboys are going to do with analytics moving forward. So I'm excited that they've kind of keeping that rolling, and that, letting go of Robinson wasn't a precursor to them rolling back a bunch of analytic thought. It's, if anything, it sounds like they're kind of fully leaning into this, and they're trying to go out and get one of the best in the NFL to do it for them.
Yeah, I was reading a report yesterday where he was in Frank Wright's ear even during the game, like helping make decisions, helping thinking about play sequencing, even in okay, this is how we use some of the time management stuff, when to use your timeouts. And actually, I think you had a comment on Twitter about this yesterday. Like, if Mike McCarthy is going to be taking over the play calling, the guy that's in his ear probably needs to be somebody that can help with some of the situational stuff, right? Hey, go for it. Or, hey, maybe this is a good time to use the timeout. Maybe that's what his role will be as well.
Yeah. And I think, what I actually commented yesterday too, is that McCarthy is kind of well known for being problematic at times with making some of the time management at the end of the game. Look, let's be clear. Most NFL coaches are terrible at it. I mean, even Andy Reid, who's considered one of the best coaches in history at this point, has a long history of being terrible at fourth quarter management. And
so is Bill Belichick.
Management.
Bill Belichick has had his moments where he's really struggled.
So I think that was my point, is that, if you feel like this is a weakness in your game as a head coach already, and now on top of that, you've got play calling duties, you really need a strong voice to kind of give you the odds on some of the stuff, to kind of give you the perspective of what you're doing, and putting that in the hands of an analytics guru or someone like that who can run those numbers quickly. I think that shows good process and an ability to, say what you want about Mike McCarthy. He may have a lot of ego, but he understands that he has a lot of ego, and he evaluates himself well and understands his own weaknesses. And this could be a sign of a guy who recognizes that this is a weaker part of his game, trying to get himself some help when he gets added as a play caller. I think it's very smart.
I also think Mike McCarthy doesn't get enough credit for putting really strong people around him. Some people are just threatened by other guys that are really good at jobs, right? I don't think some other coordinators or coaches would bring in somebody like Dan Quinn, who's been to the Super Bowl as a head coach, and let him run the defense basically by himself, right? Now to get one of, if not the top analytics guru, and if he's going to listen to him and he's going to give that guy some game day responsibilities, I think that's a sign of a good coach. And we know that Mike McCarthy is a good coach. It's just, it's really a positive thing to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I think lots of people are going to talk about who he is as a play caller, and we're going to see that. We're going to find out exactly who he is as a play caller here in a bit. But I think if we're talking about his reviews of who he is as a coach, as a head coach, I think he's been a very good head coach so far.
Yeah, we even got a question. Is Mike McCarthy the third best head coach in Dallas Cowboys history? And I kind of blew it off like, no.
Then you have to consider it, right? Like, I obviously, it's to me, it comes down to
it's Landry. Jimmy Johnson.
Landry and Johnson are obviously look, those are the two, right?
Yeah.
The three that kind of come down is the other guy who won the Super Bowl. So if you want to kind of throw him in there, you can, but I don't know. I think it comes down to Parcells and McCarthy. I think those.
I'd go Parcells though.
Yeah, I think it's hard to argue, but I think if you get another strong playoff run, another 12-win season this year, it's going to be hard to argue against McCarthy. He's done a really, really good job just as purely as a head coach since he's been here.
All right, let's get to some more Twitter questions, including 2 questions about the Cowboys tight end room next. This episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs make you look so good. Bird Dogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and let you have a truly sculpted look in the leg. Bird Dog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but they fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of a stiff, restricting cotton. Bird Dogs fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks and feels just like a khaki, but stretches so that you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Bird Dog uses anti-stink, anti-sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. I absolutely love my Bird Dog shorts. I wear them all the time to the golf course. They're nice and flexible, but they keep me nice and cool. Now you can go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL and enter promo code LockedOnNFL for a free Yeti style tumbler, just like this one, with your order. That is birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every day. We've been teasing this for a while, but Landon, you and I on Monday are going to talk about the Cowboys quarterback situation going into the 2023 season, what type of play they got from that unit last year. I promise we'll do that on Monday. We'll talk about that then.
Minicamp keeps getting in the way, right?
We get
It's
too
just
much
crazy.
news. That's the thing, too much news.
Yeah.
And then inevitably the Cowboys will sign Dalvin Cook over the weekend.
Probably, yeah. Then we're gonna have to talk. Then we'll have to push it down another week, so it'll get there. I promise.
Next question from Mark. How concerning is it that Luke Schoonmaker missed a bunch of practice time before camp with a foot injury, especially when you consider his, injury history throughout his career at Michigan?
I mean, I think it's concerning. I mean, you never want to see a young player missing OTAs. Specifically, a tight end. He's got to learn a lot of, kind of specifics there. It's an inflammatory thing, so I think they're just trying to be careful. And
I'm glad that you made that point because it's different than an injury, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like it's something that you give a little bit of rest and he'll be fine, or something he can manage.
Yeah, and I think if this was during the season, they would manage it. They would give him a little bit of extra rest or something, or alternate practice days or something. I think this is a situation where, again, we got to look at where we are. This is OTAs mini camp. There's a long way to go. We don't want to inflame something that's just going to make it worse. Like, might as well give him the opportunity to stay off of it a little bit, put him in a boot so he's even further kind of not inflaming it, help the kind of inflammation go down, and then just kind of move on from there. Look, is it concerning that he's having it? Yeah, it's a little bit concerning that it's flaring up like that. But honestly, these football players deal with these kind of things a lot, and they have to kind of fight through it during the season. We tend to see a little bit more of that stuff here because during a regular season, even during training camp, maybe during important parts, they would have played through it. But here, there's no reason not to be anything but abundantly cautious. So that's why we're starting to see stuff. I do think your logic is sound. I forgot who asked the question, but I do think the logic. Mark. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hi, Mark. I do think your logic is sound here. I think the idea that, he was an injured player in college. He's starting out in a boot at OTAs. That is, certainly something to raise the alarm about. But I think the context here kind of tells you that this isn't quite something that is like, scary yet. We got to remember, OTAs, they are just, if you got a splinter, they're holding you out, man. Like, they just really aren't concerned. They want to make sure you get the mental reps. They want to make sure that you're in the room learning and seeing that stuff. But if you're not able to kind of get through the kind of physical reps that they're doing, he got a handful of those early on. So he probably got enough work that they felt comfortable if they had to shut him down just to make sure everything was okay.
You're right. I mean, it's nothing. This injury itself is nothing to be worried about, but it is the history of the injuries.
Sure.
He didn't make it through the East-West Shrine Game practices because of an injury during the OTAs. He had a hip injury that he was kind of working through, and now it's a foot injury. Again, nothing seems so severe that I'm worried about, like, him being ready for training camp or, anything like that. But I do wonder, like you mentioned Bill Parcells. What would Bill Parcells have thought of Luke Schoonmaker having all these kind of nagging things? Like,
Schoonmaker on the bike on the side of practice. Annoying Parcells.
Basically, Jason Witten had his jaw closed and Parcells expected him to be out there. It's just totally different now, right? Like you mentioned, if you have a hangnail, you're not practicing. Well, and I understand, like, it's just so valuable to have the guys ready for the regular season. But I will say his overall durability and like week to week stuff, I am a little bit nervous about.
I imagine if Bill Parcells was coaching in this era of football, he certainly would not have retired as early as he did, because he would have lost all his coaching money due to fines because
Yeah.
of all the OTA practices that he would have had. Yeah, I mean, look, this is something to keep an eye on without a doubt. Like it's your second round tight end. You have big plans for him. You have to. It's not so much, is this an injury we need to keep an eye on? It's more of, is this going to be a guy that's always got a thing? Like that's what we're on watch for.
Where
I
you
don't know
always
that
have the maintaining, or
I don't
like-
I don't know that we're there yet, but I think obviously this is a path that leads to that if it continues. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. It's the drum beat. It's just like the drum beat, the positive drum beats, right? The negative drum beat of like, hey, he's got an ankle, hey, he's got a hip, hey, he's got a like all these being lower body injuries doesn't make me feel great. So we do need to kind of keep an eye on it as the rest of training camp goes on.
We've got a quick question here from JJ. He wants to know, now that the real emotion and hype of how Deuce Vaughn became a Cowboy is behind us, what is the range of what we can expect from him in year one? I'd like a floor and a ceiling, please.
Well, I think opportunity is going to be a big part of this, So it's kind of hard to put a floor and a ceiling at this point without knowing for sure what his role is going to be on this team. But that's something that they're going to be figuring out, right? So I would say the floor is, I have a hard time believing. I'd be shocked if he didn't make the team. Or if he wasn't on the team in some form or fashion, whether that be in practice squad or whatever, right?
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think the floor is that he's on your practice squad.
Yeah, I do too. Like, I mean, it's like I said, like I think he makes the team. It's like in some sort of roster mechanism, whether that's actually on the team or at the very bare minimum as a practice squad player that they potentially would consider calling up at certain points, right? And I think the ceiling for him is, I mean, to be used in a similar to Tony Pollard role that you saw, probably not last year's Tony Pollard role, but like, a year or two before Tony Pollard's role, where he was a true kind of secondary back, a change of pace guy. You put him out in certain situations. I'm sure they'll have packages specifically for him. And he becomes kind of a gadget guy that you use at running back and deploy in a whole bunch of different ways, and becomes just another weapon for your offense to deploy when you need him. I think it's unrealistic to suggest that his ceiling would be, starting running back or Pro Bowl running back. I think what you're hoping for, especially this year, is a guy who can be a change of pace, a guy that you can throw into the game to kind of mix it up, to get a big play. Again, I would look to how Tony Pollard was used, not last year, but 2 years ago, as the kind of entryway into how they'll start to deploy Vaughn. And then as the season goes on, maybe you see him take more and more of those carries to kind of alleviate Pollard as the wear and tear of the season gets onto him.
Here's the ceiling for me, and this is going to be very subjective and random, but this is my thought. I want to be at the end of the year thinking, hey, they got to find more ways to get Deuce Vaughn the ball, right? Like, hey, he had 94 touches this year. Maybe he should get 130, right? Like, find more ways, because that means is he was productive whenever he touched the ball, right? But they didn't have to use him so much because of other injuries, and the offense was fine without him. That's kind of what I would like to see happen here.
Yeah, I agree. And honestly, I think as much as everyone we all complained about how they deployed Pollard, I think it was good for his career development, because it allowed him to be
right.
Yeah, it allowed that, and they allowed him to be efficient while getting experienced. And by the time that he started to get more and more carries, he was less boom and busty. He was able to kind of have a higher floor in his runs, finish a little bit better, so that, as he got more and more carries, you weren't seeing, 3-yard loss in 6-yard gain and that sort of thing.
Yes.
You were seeing a lot more, the negatives were not as negative while maintaining very high positives, which I think is what you're trying to work towards in the future for this role. As a rookie, you kind of just need to mitigate some of the negatives that can happen with a rookie running back, especially a small rookie running back.
Yeah. We've got one more question about another tight end on the roster, Princeton Fant, and what his role might be for this Cowboys team. We will get to that next. All right, Landon, our last question here comes from Robbie, who is an everydayer. He wants to know, I haven't heard Princeton Fant mentioned once across the entire Boys podcast universe. That's not true. We've mentioned him a couple times. Robbie, get caught up on those episodes. Was he at any of the camps? What is your take on him? I will start by saying this, Landon. I have a major bias in favor of these type of players. So I can't be rational here because I love the tight ends that are versatile, that you can give backfield touches with, which, by the way, he did. He had 5 rushing touchdowns last year alone for Tennessee.
On 6 carries or something like that, too. Yeah.
I love the guys that, I loved Aaron Hernandez coming out of Florida. I love the Jonnu Smith type of tight ends, the Delaney Walkers, the guys that you move all over the place. He's obviously not that good, but there are parts of his game that I kind of like.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and I 100% agree with you, and I love that type of player, that H-back, that's versatile, that can move in about. I mean, honestly, it's the other side of the coin from Hunter Lepke, right? It's and that's where I think the interesting conversation of this comes in, right? Is that, to me, Princeton Fant is kind of your potential backup to Hunter Lepke in a ways, right? Like, even though they play different positions, like the role on the roster will function very similar, like, right? Like, it's like a 5th tight end and a potential fullback. He could be a lead blocker. You can get him carries near the goal line if you need. He has, obviously, like you mentioned, experience there. He's a versatile player that played at a high level last year in the SEC. Obviously has some NFL blood in him, as his cousin, or is this his brother Noah? I can't remember. They are related.
Noah, cousin.
Yeah,
Noah Fant. Yep.
Noah Fant's cousin. So I think that there is something to him. I think he's an intriguing player. I don't know if I like him more than Hunter Lepke, and I think that that's the difference, right? I think that I think you're going to be able to do more things with him, and I wonder if I'm thinking for Fant, another guy who could be a really great practice squad addition, right? Like, you'd love to have him on there. And then if you need to call him up and he could play 15 different spots, like on a game day, if you need to play special teams and then tight end and fullback, he could do all that if you needed to. So I think that they'll try to find a way to keep him. They'll try to find a way to kind of develop him a little bit. I would honestly, just because of the way the room is right now, unless he has a really incredible camp and beats out Sean McEwen, I would be surprised to see him on the 53-man roster.
Yeah, I think he's a practice squad guy that you develop, and maybe 2 years from now he takes Peyton Hendershot's spot on the roster. What I like about this H-back position is there's so many different types of H-backs, at least in the last 20 years, right? Like, you get the Jim Kleinsaucers, who's really more of the block, right? You get the Chris Cooley, who is the receiver. You get the Trey Burtons, who are like the former quarterbacks, who are more just the athletes. Or you get the Rod Smiths, who are more of a running back, but also kind of have that fullback body. I kind of think he's more of I don't know, because I don't think he's a great runner, but also I don't think he's all that polished of a receiver, but he can do a little bit of everything, which makes him unique, right?
Yeah, I mean, if this guy was incredible at any one thing, he would have been drafted, right? Like, I mean, I think that's the thing, is guys like this, they get taken and picked up where they should because they're valuable in the sense that they're versatile and they can do a lot of things for you, but they can't do any one good thing well enough to kind of take somebody's job.
Exactly.
They're just like they basically exist in the NFL because there are roster game day restrictions, right? Like if the NFL was like college football and you could, dress 100 players, guys like this probably wouldn't be on the team because they're not good at any one thing to do it. But because you need these versatile guys to fill in the back of your roster, to play special teams, to fill in if someone gets hurt, these guys become valuable and they're developable.
And even honestly, the role that he's going to have for this team is being on the practice squad and the scout team to give you different looks for the season, right? Like if you're going to be playing Jalen Hurts, right? You could probably have him do some things in Wildcat and shotgun and all that kind of stuff to give you a bigger bodied guy like that who has a little bit of experience running the ball. Or if you're going to have one of these move tight ends, you have him kind of lining up and giving you some different looks. that's where his role for the Cowboys is probably going to be. And I hate that for him because he's a fun player, but he's probably going to have to cut his teeth on the scout team.
Oh, that's just the path these guys take. I mean, it's okay.
Yep.
He's just not as physically talented as his cousin, and that's fine. Like he's got a lot going on for him that still will keep him in the NFL. He'll still collect a paycheck if he continues to kind of develop a little bit. Guys like these that are kind of, football rats, like coaches, sons types player, that like can do a little bit of everything. They hang around, coaches, they get a coach that likes them, that they'll vouch for them. They'll keep them around on a roster, try to develop them because of this, right? Because of all, because they could be a multiple useful player on game day. They could be a super helpful practice day player on the other's team on the scout squad. They could do a lot of things that you need administratively done on your football team that may not necessarily be, producing yardage on the field specifically. These guys have value on football teams. Value that, it's a lot like the analytics guys, right? Like you don't see these guys play, but what they do for the rest of the team during the week and during the season can really be valuable. So that's why they invest in these guys and try to develop them a little bit.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every day. Again, every dayers on Monday, we're going to break down the Cowboys quarterback situation. So make sure you tune in for that. We are free and available on all platforms. Go check out our show on YouTube. You can go follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosier, and we'll see you guys next time.